Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Observable Flutter, or as we could call it today, Debuggable Flutter. Actually, we're not really going to be doing anything with Flutter today, just Dart. Um, my name, as always, is Craig LeBenz, and I am your host. And before I get started, let's move through all the housekeeping. Super important. Remember, folks, that it's very important to me, and I hope to all of you, that we live up to the standards of the Flutter community here. So we're under the YouTube Terms of Service and the Flutter Code of Conduct. So let's be very kind and respectful to each other, as always. And I think that's actually it. We're pretty much ready to go now. So I promised you today live debugging. And that is what I'm going to deliver. So it was brought to my attention by the creator of ServerPod, Victor Lindholt, that there's a problem with connection pooling coming from Cloud Run on GCP going to a Postgres database. And at first glance, that may not seem like a giant problem to everyone, but it's basically a showstopper for deploying Dart code to Cloud Run that wants to talk to a database, because connection pooling is absolutely critical. So if you're not familiar with connection pooling, basically, if you don't use it, then every single request you make to your app will probably naively spin up a new connection to the database, and that will both be slow and expensive and could hammer your database with a just crazy amount of connections. So connection pooling means that each worker node kind of maintains this pool of connections and reuses them and actually stay open. So it's much faster to talk to your database, and the amount of connections going to the database is more consistent and more predictable. So connection pooling is a just best practice of all the best practices in server-side development, and it's not working for Cloud Run and Postgres and the Dart Postgres pools package. So let's get going here. So this is the error that you get after a second request. It works after the first request and then it times out. And this works from other environments, so like Google Compute Engine, GCE. If you deploy your app there, it works just fine. But from Cloud Run, we get this issue, this response. I didn't look at what the error code is here. That's not what I want. I want this. And then we're going to go to network. And I'll probably have to refresh here, so it might work. The first time, there we see, because Cloud Run had turned off since I reproduced this bug last night. But now, if I refresh, it's just going to work. What? Refresh. Okay, now it's hanging. Does it work twice? That would be a surprising number of it working. Let's see, Randall says, connection pooling is very important when the amount of work done to connect and disconnect dwarfs the actual query. Yeah, absolutely. If you're just, and that'll be true for most queries that you want to run in a request response cycle. Any long query is hopefully just running on like a clone of your, a read-only clone of your database that you use for analytics and whatnot. Anyway, we can see this hanging. It takes a while, so we won't get to see the status for a minute here. But then we will, I want to make the, there we go. Okay, too big. We won't get to see this until it times out. It might be several minutes, but we'll see the actual status code eventually. So let me show you what I did to reproduce this bug, and then we can begin to debug it. And I have no idea where this episode is going to take us. I didn't even add a single print statement once I produced the bug. So it's all waiting for us here today. So I ran last night dart create -t server-shelf and made a new server-side app called connection pools. And well, let me go full desktop here so I'm not blocking stuff. So I just created this app, connection pools, and then that created, that generated some code pretty similar to this, but I just made a few changes to it. So in my pubspec file, I added the Postgres package and the Postgres pool package, two that enjoy a nice little bit of version symmetry there. And everything else, I added GCP, but I didn't use it. I think I'm actually going to get rid of it. I thought it had a good logging utility, but I actually couldn't quite figure out how to use it. So yeah, I added these two libraries, and that is it. Yeah, that's all I did in here, other than the unused GCP package. And so then back in server, I made a Postgres pool. And this just comes, by the way, from the, if we go to pub.dev and we go to packages, Postgres pool, we'll see in the example what to do. So we make a Postgres pool, we pass it a Postgres endpoint, set some settings, and then when we actually want to run a query, we access our Postgres pool, we call .run, and that gives us a callback. And this is important because the pool has a fixed size of connections. And so let's say it has 4 connections as specified here. If we have 5 queries active right now, maybe because we've parallelized them in our app or there's just a bunch of requests coming in, that 5th one, while the other 4 are out, it's going to have to wait. Doesn't open a new connection. So that might seem like, well, that's slower. But over time, in aggregate, it's faster to do this and way more performant and easier on the database. So that 5th one is just going to have to wait a second. So of course, we pass a callback. And then whenever the pool has an available connection, it will use, it will kind of run the next callback in the queue. And hopefully that callback actually runs a query. Otherwise, then you're really just abusing your connection pool. And so, yeah, and then, we don't really have to worry about this, the futures thing that they're doing here. This is just kind of showing that you can parallelize these queries. So that is kind of what we were, so that's the documentation. Okay, so back here. So I made a Postgres pool, and then down in the main method, which was generated by the command that I ran, dart create. In the main method right here, let me get rid of that window. I'm making a Postgres pool, and then I'm just kind of farming out the endpoint to a method. And the reason that I'm doing that is simply so that I can have some local host versus production branching. So if there's a DB host environment variable, then that tells me that I'm in Cloud Run. And so then I'm going to do this kind of arcane thing that I'll talk about to get my host for where the database lives. And if there is no DB host environment variable, then I just assume I'm sitting in my computer right here, and then its localhost is where the database lives. And I'm just running a database from Docker right now. And then all of this stuff, again, I'll take a database name and user and password from the environment if they're available. Otherwise, I'll just use Postgres admin. And then, of course, when I deploy to Cloud Run, I supply these environment variables. So I got this all working last night just because I didn't, reproducing the bug isn't debugging the bug, and wanted to debug on the show. But now, just walking through it quickly. So we have the PG endpoint that sets up the Postgres pool. I'm just using the same settings from the documentation. And then all the rest of this is again generated by dart create. So I didn't touch any of this code. But then back up top here, now we just have one route. So the home route says get time, and it runs that the pool that we made, the Postgres pool.run, and we pass it a callback. And our callback is incredibly simple. We are just asking the database what time it is, not particularly high value usage of a database, but it will at least run a connection or it will use a connection, run a query, all that good stuff. And then all these queries return lists of lists, because in general, queries are going to return rows, and each of those rows are going to have values. Even though our query merely returns a single value, it'll still be packaged as a list of lists. So we just kind of drill in, get the time. And that was how, well, we saw the time before, but now it is timed out, and we've gotten a 504, which I guess is just timeout. I'm not going to lie, I have not seen 504. Yeah, gateway timeout. Okay. That's funny. I feel like normally that ends up being a 502 bad gateway. I don't think I've really seen a 504 very much. Interesting. That may even be our first bit of data to debug. I don't know. Let me look at some chat here. Where are you from? Samander says. Well, I'm originally from a little place called Michigan, in an area around a city of Detroit. But I'm currently in California, where the weather is much warmer than Michigan. Randall says, determining the number of parallel items is a tuning issue and will vary between setups. I've seen the number between 5 and 50 personally. Just have to watch where queries are mostly blocked. Yeah, database administration is incredibly involved. You just have to get into it and look at what's going on. There's no other way around that. Okay, well, so we see here the time was 5 minutes. And that's probably, I wonder where that comes from. I wonder if that's in this settings variable here. Where are you? Let's go into the PG settings class and see, is there any query timeout, 5 minutes. Okay. So the library thinks the query is timing out. And that's another piece of data. So 504, the server sent a 504. I wonder if the 504 was emitted, I wonder if the client bailed and set the 504 and nothing came back from the server. I don't know. These are interesting questions. I don't know the answer to that. Waiting for a response from server, 5 minutes. And then we did get a little content download. So upstream request timeout, that probably did come from the server. Man, I haven't debugged a web thing like this in a long time. You don't do this very often in Flutter. All right, so we have a couple of things to go on, and yeah, let's get started here. Where should we begin? Now, one thing that I already was thinking last night, but I didn't add that print statement. But the first thing that I was wondering is, do we even get in this method? Does the pool try to run another query? And I'm guessing it does, but I don't know. So let's just print running query. Seems pretty simple. Now we get to redeploy to Google Cloud. So that was stuff that I also set up last night because I didn't, again, want to kind of slow down this this stream with that. So I have this make file here, and this isn't a very Windows friendly pattern because I don't think make files work on Windows, but they're still pretty nice overall, if nothing else, as just a bit of documentation for yourself on how does this work again? So there's 2 steps that we need to run to redeploy our code to Cloud Run. The first thing is that we need to use Docker to repackage our code and upload that to Google's servers. And actually it happens in the other direction. We upload and then it builds on Google's servers. And that happens with gcloud builds submit, this command right here. Now gcloud builds submit will use a cloud build.yaml file to kind of specify how and what it builds. And that's just an implicit file name. If you have a different file name, then you pass a flag. So in cloud build.yaml, there's some more arcane stuff here, actually some commented code because I decided to separate my build and deploy. So I'm just going to delete that right now. So there's 2 steps to this where we're going to build an image from our code using Docker, and then we're going to push that image to a container registry on Google's servers. And again, I'll just kind of get rid of some more commented code. So if I run, I could either type gcloud build submit, or I can run my make command, and either of those will rebuild the app. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll use make. I'm going to say make build, and this syntax here means, so the build command depends on the project command, and the project command just sets what project runs, so that'll be redundant after every other time that I use it. But if you're switching back and forth between projects, it's pretty nice. And then I've just kind of set a couple variables up here for myself. So make build, we'll see that it first, sets that project, and then it just dives right into all of this stuff about rebuilding. We really don't need to study this output because it is, just a bunch of Docker output that is being streamed back to us from Google's servers. Vikas asks, what is the theme of this in VS Code? And it's Synthwave 84, and it's really quite nice, isn't it? Synthwave 84. That will give you this juicy purple goodness. All right, so Docker is still running, which means we'll read some more chat. Makefiles date back to Unix v7 45 years ago. All right, so that's an interesting factoid. And my question for you, Randall, is, did you have to Google that? Because boy, would I have had to. Diamoy, oh, well, shucks. I'm really glad to hear that. Thanks for the kind words. All right, we're still building. This is all, again, all happening on Google's servers, and this is actually important. Building in this way, especially if you're using an ARM like Mac, like I'm currently using, then building on Google's servers is very important because it builds on it builds with the architecture of your current machine. So the first time I got an updated Mac that has the ARM, Apple Silicon architecture, I built a Docker artifact and I sent it to Cloud Run, and it broke and it exploded immediately. And I got some very weird, maybe the word architecture did appear in the error. I don't remember, but it was just like, what the heck is this? And then realized I was like, oh, my Docker file was built locally, or my Docker image was built locally to run on an ARM architecture of my laptop, and then I sent it to Google's computers that presumably are running Intel architecture, and it exploded. So building on Google servers gets rid of that problem. Okay, so the first step is done. We have built, and now if we just scroll down in our make file, again, I was building and deploying kind of separately. I didn't want a deploy to be dependent on a build, so I have a separate command here, deploy. And it depends, again, only on project, not on build again. And it just runs, this big long deploy command. So make deploy. And this will now run that command and deploy the app. And this is very fast because it's just moving. Everything's already on Google servers. It's just kind of hopping over into the Cloud Run spot. So it's pretty fast, and we're done. Great. So this should also mean the old worker has definitely been turned off. So the first request, it should work. And this means it will get to look at some logs. So I'm going to refresh the app, and we got a time. And when I look at my logs, let's have this refresh. I think, yeah, it's still just showing the logs from last night. There we go. Now it's loading at the bottom here. And when I scroll down, we see running query. Great. It's funny that running query came through, at like basically, oh no, server listening on port came through after? How did that happen? Server listening on port comes from the bottom of the file. I mean, there's some, you can't really predict the order of log statements sometimes, but this is a real surprise that this came 6 seconds after, right? 9:19:48, this is California time, versus 9:19:42 for running query. I have no no guesstimates about that. Anyway, let's see. When I refresh and it hangs, do we get that log statement again? It's hanging. And let's try to refresh our logs. Nothing. No new log statement. All right, this is our first data point. Run is not, here we go, the callback is never executed. Now let's dive into run and start to see how on earth this works. So it runs a function outside of a transaction. Okay, there's probably a sibling function that runs it in a transaction. And so here's our function that we pass, retry options, or else retry if. Interesting. I mean, I don't think we want to retry after a timeout, and then we'll just wait for another round of timeouts. So I don't think that's going to help. Trace ID, session ID. If we get further into this and we want, we make some progress debugging this, maybe we'd use some trace or session IDs. I'm not sure where those end up going. Okay, so this retry options, yeah, so we're probably using some like default, like don't retry that comes off the shelf. But anyway, so retry options dot retry, and so with connection, let's think here. I'm guessing with connection is, so I think if we put a print statement here, and we're editing code not in my app right now, so this is generally a bad idea, but actually I might have to pull this in if I want to add print statements to Postgres pool. I might have to like just copy the code into my own app and like pretend it's my code. But anyway, I anticipate that coming shortly. I bet if I put a print statement here, it would print. And then if I look in with connection, that's where the error would be, because there's just nothing here that could have really broken yet. I mean, I guess retry could have broken because this is also taking a callback. Let's peek at retry. Yeah, so we're looking at some attempt logic, and this will be attempt 0, and then it just immediately runs the function. Yeah, so we don't have any retry logic, but that doesn't kick in until after the function runs, so that's not the issue. So it is going to be in with connection. So I'm not going to bother making the print statement here, deploying, seeing it. I just see no way that the error could come before this with connection function. So as we dive in here, executor schedule task. Okay. And then this says use or create. So we have two things to look at: schedule task and use or create. Oh, you know what? Also, there's a couple other high-level things that I want to check. I was thinking about this as I was falling asleep last night. I want to check some high-level networking things in Google Cloud. I can't believe I almost forgot this. So let me open my database page. We're going to come back to this, but I want to rule out a couple other things. Because remember, we know that this code works from Google Compute Engine. So if there's a bug in here somewhere, it's like very subtle and sneaky, and it's just some intersection between this code and like Cloud Run's networking or something, right? So that's very, it's going to be a very specific kind of narrow needle to thread. So I do want to rule out a couple other things. So I'm going to switch over to my database settings. Oh, I didn't actually mean to close that. So I'm going to keep my logs open. And then in this tab, we'll switch over to Cloud SQL. And in this pools database, I want to play with a couple other things here, like getting rid of the public IP address. I don't know if that's going to change how this works. Also, a little primer on database connections with Postgres. So remember, there was back in server.dart at the bottom, I had all of this nonsense. And if you've not connected to a Postgres database before, especially on Cloud Run, or you're just using this socket file, you might see this and think, huh? So what's happening here is a common way to connect to databases, especially Postgres, is through a socket file that sits on your computer And I'm not gonna lie, I don't even know how socket files work. I think they're black magic. But this socket file, it's not even really a file. It's like a fake virtual file. And it's essentially just a connection to some other computer. And it keeps that connection open. And when you have a database connected to a Cloud Run instance, which we can see, if we go back to Cloud Run, and we look in our edit and deploy, blah, 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 and then I scroll all the way to the bottom, we see here that Cloud SQL Connections is pointing to this database. So this bit here is enough to tell Cloud GCP, like, hey, these two things should be allowed to talk to each other. You know, Cloud Run is on the list. When he shows up at the database's bouncer, it's like, what's your name? And he says Cloud Run. You're like, okay, yeah, you're in. So they're able to talk by way of this connection. And then when you do that, the next time you deploy Cloud Run, by the magic of all the stuff going on behind the scenes, it will add a socket file at this exact location. And it's /Cloud SQL, so from the root of the runtime operating system, /Cloud SQL. And then all of this is the name of your database. So that comes from your database page, and it's literally this connection name right here. So I'll just copy this in, and we'll have a commented version of this. That's not how you make a comment in Dart. So it's /Cloud SQL / all of that. And then this part is actually just pure Postgres. This is very standard Postgres stuff. So this follows you everywhere you go. So at this location on your running Cloud Run, workers, there's a file right there, and you can use that as a host, just like an IP address, just like a domain or something, right? If you had mapped it that way, even though it's on your computer, you pass it as the host, and then you'll often in the wrapper libraries that set all this up, you just you tell it that it's a Unix socket, and then they do some other things differently based on that. And again, I'm deriving whether or not this is a Unix socket, again, by the presence of this DB host. This is just a convention that I invented for myself in this project. This is not a global concept. Okay, so anyway, that's how we're connecting. And this makes me think, right? Remember I said that this connection, this socket file, acts like a host, like an IP address for your local code. Well, I'm just wondering, these things are timing out. Something's going wrong with the connection. What if this didn't have a public IP address? Would that put it in a different profile in terms of the Google Cloud networking setup that will maybe unlock this? I have no idea. But I want to find out. So it's been a minute since I've done this. Maybe it's in the Connections tab, networking. Yeah, I'm going to unassign this public IP address. It will no longer have a public IP. I have to select a type of connectivity. I hope if I put on private IP address that the socket will still work. Yeah, because now I'm going to need to add a VPC, and I can, I guess, add the Cloud Run instance to the same thing. Let's see here. I don't know. I'll put it on my VPC. I have no idea how old that is. This sandbox project is not new. Sure, my VPC. I could be barking up the wrong tree here. Don't know. Let's see. Quisai says, I'm curious about the code created in one file. How many lines of code? Which file are you talking about? I'd love to know what you mean there. Let's see. There's a whole lot of chat going on here. Are you guys solving the issue for me here? Randall didn't have to Google it. He was there. Don't tell me it didn't happen. I saw it happen. First typed LS in 1977. Randall, I was a mere -9 years old at that time. Okay, la la la. All right, there's, chat about background tasks. Okay. So this is, I'm going to hide myself here. We see in the bottom right, that this change that I just made is going through. So as soon as that's done, then we can try to reconnect and see how this goes. I don't know, I might have to redeploy Cloud Run. I might have to redeploy Cloud Run if the connection path to the database is different enough. Let's see. Hopefully this finishes quickly. I don't know if it will. While it runs, I'm going to just try to brainstorm other things that could be going on. Let's look at the code some more. Postgres pool. Where were we? Why are we all the way down here in this file? Where was run? There's run. There's with connection. There we go. All right, so yeah, we had two new players here. The executor and schedule task. Also concurrency. That's interesting. So settings concurrency is written to executor concurrency. And this is the maximum number of concurrent sessions, which defaults to 1, but we remember that it had been upped to 4 in our settings. So 4 concurrent connections, we shouldn't be approaching that, as this is merely our second query, and the first one is done. So shouldn't be an issue there. Okay, back to run, and then back to, yeah, with connection. All right, so that's not an issue. Executor schedule task. Let's see what this does. It schedules an async task and returns with a future that completes when the task is finished. The task may not get executed immediately. Indeed. So we need to find the implementation of this. Oh, abstract executor. Okay, so what is our kind of executor? Let's find where this comes from. We just saw that this was abstract. Huh? Yeah, oh, there's a factory. Which it sends underscore executor. Okay. How do you work? You must be in this file. You are, in the implementation file? Is that like a part situation? Part implementation, yes. Okay. What method are we doing on the executor again? With connection. So it's executor schedule task. So let's look at schedule task. Schedule task. There we go. All right, so we're not getting this error. So it makes an item, waiting. Okay, this is just a list. And then trigger is probably going to try to run something off the first thing. Oh man, it just doesn't feel like the error is going to be here, you know? Because it works on GCE. It's still kind of instructive, still a little educational. So yeah, make sure that we are following the concurrency rule and waiting is not empty, because if waiting is empty, then we can just get out of this method. Something about rate. If rate does not equal null, it seems like it's fine. A little bookkeeping on how performant these things are, presumably. Oh yeah, timeouts, right? So we need to know this. Started is not empty, right? So it's kind of like a queue, essentially. So we're going to take the first one off and then run it. Yeah, make a timer, looking good. Started. Okay, so we put it on a list of things that are in flight, and then we continue and use a completer. I always love using completers. I think it's really, really fun to use a completer. All right, so then it goes into running, and we call trigger again. All right, I don't know, it's a little confusing. I don't think the problem's in there. Let's see if our database updated. Nope, still killing time. Anaj, we are debugging a problem with connection pooling from Cloud Run to Cloud SQL. And I have no idea where the error is. It may be so hidden from us that we never find any hint of the problem in this live stream. We should all be comfortable with that possibility. Especially because I've just made this setting change. It's taking 5 minutes to propagate, and I don't know what it's going to look like to flip it back. Oh, and it's still going. All right, so anyway, blah, blah, blah. It's really hard to imagine. I haven't fully parsed this into my brain yet, but I don't think it's the issue. I don't think it's what's going on. All right, someone says, Sarbador says, what is that schedule task? Recently, I got that problem in debugging. What? What do you mean? Say more. Identify yourself. Okay, schedule task. Let's go back to this. That's where we were. But I went into trigger there briefly. So, and then we're awaiting the completer's future. That's good. Result item. So timeout exception, but we did not get this exception. We didn't see anything about this. Except, you know, I don't know if that would have really been logged. That's interesting. Okay, let's keep that in mind. And then we await the task. So now we're finally, is closing. Who are you? Where do you come from? Closing. Does anything set you to true? Close. We didn't call close. Okay, that's not it. That was an efficient rule out. This was schedule task. Okay, so it's not that issue. It's not is closing, so we can jump down here. We await the task. We mark it as complete. I love completers. They're just so fun. I mean, it doesn't seem to complete, so I think we're awaiting the task. But this task is probably just the method that we passed in, right? Yeah, so schedule task came, it was passed into schedule task. And schedule task came from, oh, it's our method, which was body, wrapped in this use or create. Oh, use or create. This is going to be use or create a connection, because this is a connection pool. This is crazy. This is crazy. Crypto Wolf says, what's the exception? Well, we didn't get one. It just timed out. We got no logs, nothing. Maybe some network, maybe some networking like virtual networks and access rates. Well, the first query works. Yeah, these are good hints. These are very good ideas. You may have missed hearing that the first query works, then it times out. This also works from other runtimes. So GCE, it works. GC, I don't know if Cloud Run has an acronym, but from Cloud Run, it just starts to hang out only when we use this connection pool. So let's see if this database is updated. It is at last, and I don't even know, it might have just broken our whole runtime here, or our Cloud Run app, but we're gonna find out. So if we go back, there's some button that's just like deploy again, even though nothing changed. Oh, it's literally right there, deploy. So this will just kind of rebuild everything, and it will allow us to try to reconnect to the database. One thing I don't remember is, like, I think this socket will still work even in the private IP universe that we just jumped into. I think this will still be fine, but let's find out. Okay, we've updated, so I switch back here, I refresh. It's timing out immediately. So I'm probably just in a broken state. I don't think we should read too much into this. Maybe when you have a private IP, then you can't use this. Oh, no. We put this on a VPC. Yeah. Put it on a VPC. My VPC, in fact, which means I probably need to do the same thing here. So if I go to networking, VPC network none. Yeah, okay, how do I edit you? Probably here. Let's edit networking. There we go, VPC. Why are you not showing my VPC? Connect to a network. I have to make a connector. I really don't like these. I just never know what I'm doing. On my boring show, doing a bunch of this stuff with Simon a year ago, we got to a VPC connector, and I was just like, Simon, help! And thankfully he knew everything off the top of his head, which was really helpful. Okay, so I added the API, serverless VPI, I make a connector. I don't think I really want to do this. All right, let's try briefly at least. West 2, that's what I picked. So this is my VPC connector. The network should be my VPC, very good. Subnet, I have no idea. Can you just pick a reasonable default for me, please? Create, no, I have to pick a subnet. I have no idea, custom IP range. Can I just copy this default? Don't have a clue. Maybe that'll work. Don't have a clue. Don't know anything about networking. TechX has noticed that the blue of Flutter is very similar to the green of my green screen. Good eye. Randall says the problem may be a reuse connection. Maybe there's some meta information that GCR does differently. Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be something like that. Just don't know what. All right, so we're making this connector, which then maybe means here, access resources, learn more or create. So you can learn more or create a serverless VPC connector. I could have learned more, I guess. I'm a slow reader, though. All right, let's go back to what we were looking at. All right, we have this, what is it called? Get or create or something? Use or create? Use or create. Yeah. So this method was called, and it takes our function. This is what we passed in right here, up to body. This goes all the way back to this code here. This method is passed into run, and in run, it works its way down to with connection, and it's the function, because that's what it's called here, function. So with connection takes a function that wraps our function. Whoo! Callbacks on callbacks on callbacks. So then we get into with connection. And so this is already, again, a wrapped version of ours. And we get into get or create, or sorry, use or create. That's the body there. This is a function wrapping our function. And that function that wraps our function takes the connection, which makes sense because it's got to pass that into our function. Not confusing at all. And yeah, this looks interesting. So try acquire available or await open. This seems like maybe where the code is going to hang. So I'm going to, at this point, I think, copy this code into my directory and add some print statements. Let's try it. Because I'm not going to be able to add print statements here and then ship them up to the server and have it work. That's, you know, that isn't how that isn't how Docker works. Remember, it's going to build from my pubspec.yaml. And so even if I edit my local copy of Postgres pool, it's not going to do anything when I ship it to GCP. So I'm going to open this lib directory here. Can I is there a show in Finder or something? How do I do this? Please. Okay, we're going to have to do it manually. So what is this? We go to pubcache, hosted, pub.dev, hosted, here we go, pub.dev, and Postgres pool, Postgres pool, there we go. And I guess I'll go into lib as well. Okay, so this is, and then it's all just in one file. Uh-oh. What is executor in? That's in a different thing called executor. This is getting complicated. Randall says copy path on right click on editor window tab. Oh, right here. Copy path. Nice. All right, so I also need this executor. How much do you have? It's also just one file, plus the implementation. Why did I only, oh, right, no. Okay, well, it's 2 files. All right, we're going to move all these over. It's going to be a little tedious. So I'm going to copy Postgres pool to my dev folder, where are you? Where am I? I don't remember where this went. Dev folder, I think it might be in my Flutter DevRel folder. Connection pools, there we go. There we are. And then I think it's the same folder again. And then we go into bin. And there it is, copy. Okay, 1 down, 2 to go. So now I'll go cd out of this, out of Postgres pool, and into executor. Okay. And then if we look in lib, we just see its source and executor. So I'm going to copy the lib directory to, again, out of this. Oh, no, do I have to, how do you copy it? It's like copy recursively, lib. I don't know if this is going to work. Out of the executor folder, no, root, dev, flutter devrel, connection pools, bin. Let's see if it works. Oh, okay, great. So now let's just cd to that directory. And look at what we got. ll lib Postgres pool. Oh my gosh, I did it right. Crazy. So now I'm going to close these other files that I have apparently edited. Okay, now you're unedited. Now you're unedited. And I'll unedit this. Great. So in my, let's lower this. And, oh yeah, my connector. Let's check that out. Did the connector land? All right, my VPC connector, looking good. So I want to make connect to a network. Maybe I have to refresh this page because I made the VPC connector after loading the page. Network. Do you see it? You do. Wonderful. Route only requests to private IPs through the VP connector. That seems correct. Let's try that one. Okay, and now we continue on our end. So in our pubspec.yaml file, I'm going to get rid of Postgres pool, which included executor, keeping Postgres, even though I'm not really using it yet. And now in server.dart, we don't import Postgres pool, we import local Postgres pool.dart. And in local Postgres pool.dart, we just import local executor. Oh, we need retry. Son of a gun. That was so close. I hope retry is small. Okay, import. I guess we should go here. So this will be local executor. Oh no, it's lib. I put it in lib for some reason. It made no sense. Lib executor.dart. Okay, so that gets rid of you. Now I need to do this for retry. Boo. All right, I'm going to go back to the previous directory in my terminal. And I'm going to cd out of this and, oh, into retry. Okay, please be small. Cd lib. 1 file. Copy, retry to development, Flutter DevRel, connection pools, bin, go. Okay, go back. Oh, I cd'd it into the lib directory, so my go back one is broken. Dev, Flutter DevRel, connection, bin. There we go. We got retry. So now this is just retry.dart. This is crazy. I'm probably doing this. This is, you ever heard the expression go around the block to get next door? Pretty sure that's what we're doing here. All right, I wonder if this will work. Think it'll work? I have no idea. Refresh. Cool, it worked. So we're on the VPC. I'm gonna refresh again. Is it gonna work? No, changed to nothing. Good though, we ruled it out. Actually, it's bad, because if that had been the problem, then we could have just filed a bug. But we're still hunting. So, okay. So Postgres pool is now fully migrated. This is some exciting stuff. And PG endpoint, right, we were in executor. So we went from the run file into with connection. With connection had user create. Oh yeah, we're still in the same file, but we needed to, that's right. We just needed those other dependencies. Okay, so I'm gonna perform a little surgery here. And I just wanna say, so this is like, we'll call this option 1. Okay, so also I'm gonna add a print here. And this is in, use, or create. And then we have option 1, and then we're gonna have option 2. And then this is option 1 or option 2. And then we can say resolved option 1 with option 1. Oh, we don't need those curlies. Resolved option 2 with option 2. And then our context is context. Oh, we're talking about cascades. Yeah, cascades are pretty great. So a cascade is a shortened version of, it basically is a Dart language way of allowing everything to chain. So we'll have a real quick demo into this here. I'm going to keep this fast. Language, Dart. So normally, let's say you have some class, A, and then you have a method, void, whatever, right? And then you have a version of A. So A equals A. And then there's some attributes as well or something, right? So let's say there's like an int count equals 0 or something. Let's say you want to call whatever and set the count. Well, you'd kind of have to do a dot whatever and a dot count equals 5. So this is 3 lines of code to do that. Cascades allow everything to chain. So if you wanted void whatever to be chainable, first of all, you'd have to return this. And then you'd say this is A, is now my return type here. Now I can say a dot whatever dot count equals 5. This would work, right? So now I'm down 1 line of code. But I couldn't go in the other order. And what if that was important? What if I needed to do this? Because I have kind of not good code and like this depends on count. Right? So this code is bad and you shouldn't write code like this where there's this kind of sneaky dependency on the whatever function on the count, but you know, we all write bad code. So a.count equals 5 dot whatever, like this is just incoherent, right? So we couldn't do this in 1 line of code, even though whatever chains, we're back to a dot whatever. So cascading says whenever I type 2 dots for this, then at the end of this statement, actually just like the thing that's available right now in scope is whatever I started with. So a.count equals 5. Like if I say dot here, what am I working with? It's a again. It like pops 1 off the stack. And you can just do that for methods. So a dot whatever means if I say dot here, what is IntelliSense going to give me? It's not whatever was returned by whatever. Okay, this is getting awkward. A little who's on first. It's not the item that was returned by the whatever method. You know, unless they happen to be the same. I don't really want to save this file now, do I? It's not the item that was returned by the whatever method. It's A, because it pops 1 off the stack. So that's cascading, and it's nice. And it allows a single line of code here. You can even do it off the constructor was obvious. So we make the settings object, and then we set the connection age but we pop that off the stack, and then we just set the concurrency all in one line. And there it is. That's cascading. All right. Where were we? What are we doing? Oh, I really should have started the build before I went into that. Really should have. All right, so we have updated, we've added these print statements. So I'm just going to say make build and make deploy. I'm in the wrong directory for that command. Okay, what should we talk about? Folks, we have a few minutes to kill. Good question, by the way. Yeah, Randall says they are required reading or required listening if you happen to be watching right now. Yagushrin says you might have to fix the import for executor implementation. Oh boy. Oh, thank you for paying attention. That isn't in this file. That's probably in executor.art. Did I not fix that? Oh, I did. No. Oh, it just happens to be the same. That's why I copied the folder over that way. Yeah. Good eye, though. Yeah, because it wouldn't even compile if that was the case. But great point. Kron, there's not a Discord for this, but Flutter has a Discord. And if you go to flutter.dev/community, you too can find a link to that Discord and join it. I've not thought about making a Discord for Observable Flutter, honestly. I kind of feel like we're all in enough Slacks and Discords. That's my initial thought on the matter. Terminal. Oh, nice. Those are fast. It's almost done deploying. Almost done. So let's remind ourselves what we're hoping to learn. In the use or create method, I theorized that we were getting blocked on getting this connection, that we either acquiring an available or opening was bombing. And I just want to find out exactly where in that dense line of code this was happening. And so I broke it apart to see where it's happening. And the deploy is done. And we're back at it. So refresh. It works. Let's see that our log statements worked by going back here, looking at logs, scrolling to the bottom. Okay, we see it. So result option 1, null. This absolutely makes sense for the first request because there wouldn't, it makes sense that there wouldn't be an available one yet for the first request. So this instance of, this is really not very helpful other than whether or not it's null. So we got all of our statements. Absolutely makes sense. And then running query happens at the end, of course, because after it does all of this stuff, it finally gets to our method, which is where I added the running query log statement. So now I will refresh again and it will hang and we will read the logs coming in after 9:58:35. So scrolling, so it refreshes. Problem is before this method. Wow, the problem is before this method? Really? Nothing? What does this mean? Double rainbow. What does it mean? Okay. So use or create is not the issue. Schedule task, maybe. All right, we're just going to add things everywhere. Print in the scheduled task. Great. With connection. I'm shameless now. I'm so shameless. Print in with connection. Okay. We're not calling close. Let's go back to run. And run. Remember when I ruled out that it could possibly be retry? Like, that'd be nuts. Print. We're gonna find out in run. And here we are. This is where this has to go. So this is with retry, we'll call it. Okay. Think a typo C with CTX. That would be in user create. I think you're talking about the difference between this variable here, C, and CTX here. But they're actually different variables. CTX will, so this is just a function that accepts a CTX, and we're calling it C. Apologies, by the way, if you're thinking of something else and I've misread what you're talking about. But this is a function that accepts a connection, and it's called C. And we're first building that connection and storing it in CTX. And then I bet later, yeah, we pass it in to body. So body takes a connection, and we are passing in what we build, but it has a different variable name. Oh, we could. Wait, no, I almost got excited. We could put things down here, like even in this timeout, but we don't even get these print statements, so we're not going to get down there. Dinesh says, could it be a problem with the web server running your container? Yeah, it absolutely could. That's totally possible. And it's it's kind of likely actually, because this works on a different thing. It runs on Google Compute Engine. I have not recreated that, but I was told that it does work there. So I've just trusted that. All right, I'm going to add a couple more prints because they're cheap. And oh yeah, I have another thing I wanted to test because I was so surprised that even happened. Let's just do a little more cascading here, and let's say echo. Actually, I don't even really care. This is just like, we'll say Marco, and then I'll make a new method here. It's just a response called Polo. It gets the request, and it returns a response. .ok Polo. What's your problem? Oh, get. Yeah, you have to write actual code. Okay. I want to make sure that the whole thing isn't broken, because I really thought we were going to get those print statements. I think the Marco URL will work, but we're going to find out. Okay, so I'm going to deploy all of this. Chat with you fine people again. What do we think? Should we take bets? What's the last print statement we're going to say? We're going to see. I'd love everyone to place your bets. So running query is the very last one. We know that has no chance. We already saw that all these didn't work. I kind of wish I had done this before. So those are all out of the running. We have, first it drops into run. So there's, oh, that's not run, that's run transaction. So first it drops into run, where the first possible print statements appear in run and with retry. So those are the first two answers you could give. Then it goes into with connection, where two more contenders enter the arena. The last print statement we get could be in with connection. If that's the case, it means the schedule task shenanigans fail, or the task is scheduled And this would be the last thing that we run. Debug print versus print. My linter doesn't like print. Yeah, for sure. Debug print is better for local stuff, but I actually want this to run in a production build of this server, so I have to use print. Normally, you don't want print statements in your production build, but we are deep in the weeds. Hamza says, what are you exactly building? Well, I am exactly debugging a problem connecting to a Postgres database from Cloud Run using the Dart Postgres pool library. But it works, the library works from not Cloud Run. So the library may be super duper innocent. All right, we're deployed. So I'm going to refresh and we'll see all the print statements. And we go back. And we look at the print statements. And we look at the print statements. There we go. Okay. In run, with retry, in with connection, scheduled task, in user create. It all works. Lovely. Moment of truth, folks. Moment of truth. I refreshed the wrong page. Okay, the real moment of truth. Refresh. Switch back. Is that a band? Isn't there a band called Switchback? Nothing. Are you kidding me? Whoa. Now we try Margot. It's hanging. We don't have any more debugging to do. Wow. Wow. In the words of Owen Wilson, wow. I'm just so blown away. Wow, we're done debugging. Great. What else do we want to do? We have quite a ticket to solve. Or I mean, file. Someone else's to solve. Nothing. The whole thing dies. I'm blown away by this. How is that even possible? What if the concurrency is 1? Build. How do we connect our app to a running app to extract data, to have something similar to dev tools? Oh, can you make any tutorials on creating a dev tools replica? Well, so you can basically, the truest answer to this is I don't really know the answer to how to make a dev tools replica, but I can tell you some surrounding knowledge that I have. One, you would need to talk to the analysis engine or the analysis server in the engine. I don't even know how to connect to those things, to be honest. Two, in terms of wanting to do this, there's a whole team, like a sub-team in Flutter of incredibly talented engineers who build the dev tools, and it will be an effort to replicate any percentage of what they've done. If you're envisioning something that's like missing, you could potentially file some feature requests. I think you'd probably get your feature request faster than if you did your own. Also, all their code is on GitHub, actually. Flutter, DevTools, GitHub. If you don't want that non-answer, the real answer is all somewhere in this repository. But I have never looked at this repository. What if your Dart server died? Can you check inside the container logs? Well, yeah, that is one of the issues. No more logs ever show up. So finally some more showed up because I redeployed. But nothing happens. Nothing happens after that. All right, I'm going to refresh again. Oh, no, let's start with Marco. Because the page never resolved, the URL didn't get saved. I don't know why that's a feature. Marco, Polo, great, and I can refresh. Cloud Run works, good. I just spammed the logs. That was wasteful. Okay, now we refresh here, and we get a time. Lovely. Now, concurrency 1, does it help? Refresh Marco. No, it doesn't do anything. Refresh, hangs. Wait, no, that came back. Now it hangs. We saw that once before where it would like do one more and then hang. So it's actually slightly intermittent because it did a time or two before not hang until the like third query instead of the second. I think we have video proof of that in this very stream. I said, this is hacking. I might have mumbled. Does anyone remember what I said? This is hacking? I don't remember saying those words. But I'd love to explain what happened when I said something that sounded like this is hacking. If I even know what happened. This has been an exercise in me not knowing what happened. All right, so we're going to get all those. Yep, this is when I was just spamming Control-R on the Marco file. That worked. Then we ran one query. And then we got that second query. And then it died. Super weird. I have no idea. Can you zoom in to Cloud Run logs? That's what we're looking at right now. But, oh, zoom in. Right. I'm zooming in on the wrong screen because I'm a genius. Yeah, sorry. Good call. Good call. Hey, Victor. What have you seen? We have uncovered some shenanigans. Let me tell you. These are proper shenanigans. Victor, would you be surprised to learn that a simple HTTP request also hangs in this state? It's not just an attempt to run another query. I added this URL, Victor. Wrap your mind around this. Marco just sends back Polo. Little summer pool shenanigans. Hangs. All right. Well, I think we can basically call this, and I have a bugged file. Does anyone have any other ideas? Oh, Victor, you had said another thing. Perhaps it used another instant when it works twice. Oh, that's totally possible. But it would be really surprising if Cloud Run scaled so early, right? But that's totally possible. And, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. We can dive into this more because I bet we're going to, no, I don't bet. I have no idea. But we might get some resource. Are you going to tell us anything? Cloud Run revision labels, like revision name. I'm wondering if we're going to get like an actual worker ID that could be differentiatable to tell, you know, if it did scale. This is on worker 5. This is on worker 12. You know, if you had a ton of traffic. Revision name, location, ID. No, none of this. It would seem like it's going to differentiate. Oh, instance ID. Hey, good stuff. Okay. So this starts with 00F. Let's go up to the same thing here. 00F. Okay, and it ends with 0B1. And that ends with, where'd it go? It is a different instance ID. You genius. Well, that's a surprise. I wonder if it just does that when it launches as like some precaution. Interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. It's something with Google Cloud Run and the proxy and the database. Another thing we tried, Victor, was getting rid of the private IP on the database. So I put it, getting rid of the public. So I put it on a private IP. I added it to a VPC. And then I made a VPC connector. And then I added Cloud Run to the VPC via the connector. Didn't work. Didn't help. Randall, print some sort of process ID or host name each time. Well, I think we did end up getting that, though that would have been what we would do next if the instance ID wasn't in the logs. But we got in here labels instance ID. This ended in E3F. And if we go up to the previous one, that worked as well. And we're like, what? It worked twice. Does not end in E3F. It's a different instance ID. Oh. These are good theories. These are real good theories. Proxy needs a public ID according to the docs. Well, those docs are wrong. I think, yeah, those docs are just stale. It needs a public IP or to be on a VPC with something, and then it can access the private IP. I don't know why those docs are so abridged. Well, we learned something. I have a ticket that I can file that I believe will... I wonder how else I could get... How else could I get that like fatal error? Oh. Remember. But we're not getting... I wonder if it's like here somewhere. I wonder if it's somewhere down here, right? But the problem is if it errors here, oh, this would be like on the way out. Okay, this is so odd. This is so odd. It would have to be in, the first request completes successfully. So it'd be extremely surprising if adding any print statements to all of these try catches actually printed. Right, because if we go to the logs, we see the final, like, all done here log, right? So this means we win. That request is complete. And when, okay, I have like a lot of thoughts popping in my head here. So that request is complete. So the trailing try catches that are not in that file. Are they in that file? Oh, they're literally highlighted. All these try catches are not going to print. And then on the next request, nothing before them prints. Nothing prints. So the proxy crashing the instance is a quite good theory, and it would happen, like if that's what's going on, it must be happening completely outside of our request response cycle. Oh man, oh man. All right, someone's gonna have some, a cloud engineer is going to have some digging to do. Victor also says, I think it breaks when you do 2 requests on the same connection possibly. The pool will reuse the first connection or maybe fail to close the connection. Yeah, I totally agree with that theory. Absolutely. Yep, totally agree. I think that's what it is. In some manner. Like it's, well, I don't even know. No. No, I think that's actually not it. I think it's more back to this, because Marco doesn't even work on the next one. So it's like it doesn't even get a chance to reuse the connection. It could be this one, fails to close the connection and fails in a fatal way. Or like return it to the pool, right? The whole point of the connection pool is it doesn't close it. Tried to use one connection and still broke. So I did a similar thing with setting concurrency to 1. Is that what you did? Yeah, and we're still in that world. I set concurrency to 1. I'm guessing that's how you tried one connection. Huh. This is just bananas. It does feel like there's simply a networking issue. There's something's going on. All right. Well, folks, we debugged and we didn't fix the bug. We don't have a PR to submit anywhere, but we have an issue to file. And if nothing else, when people say an issue with a good minimal reproduction is a huge contribution, they mean it, because you just saw how long it can take to do enough investigation to be able to file an issue with a minimal reproduction. So without the pool, still broke. Oh, that's a great test. So the pool has nothing to do with it. It's totally in the, it's got to be in that proxy too. But it, you know what? This doesn't happen in other languages. It could be a handoff between the proxy and the package, except it also doesn't happen on Google Cloud, Google Compute Engine. It only happens on Cloud Run. So it doesn't happen in other languages. It doesn't happen in Python, doesn't happen in JavaScript. If it did, then that would be the biggest bug in the history of Google Cloud. So it's some handoff between, some like aligning of the stars just on Cloud Run, probably the raw Postgres library, because Postgres pool still uses Postgres library, and you just replicated this bug without the pool library. So some handoff between the Dart Postgres library and the proxy, but it's somehow activated only by, wait, no, I have another test. I have another test we have to run. I have another test. La la la. I have another test. What am I doing? I wish I still had a public IP. I wonder if it's faster to make a whole new database or switch back to public. Oh, maybe we can do both. I'll just add a public IP. That still will probably take a long time. Didn't use the proxy on GCE. That's exactly what I want to test. I want to connect not via the proxy, via instead the public IP from Cloud Run. Actually, I kind of vaguely remember that that doesn't work. I wonder if we can get the private IP. Does anyone know how to get the private IP of something on a VPC? I do not know how. But I kind of vaguely remember that you are always blocked from using the public IP on Cloud Run. This sounds familiar to me. Have we determined whether it's 2 requests on the same run dies or 2 requests quickly from 2 separate runs dies? I think we have not. Wait, let me think about this before I just say words. Same run. I don't think the speed matters. I don't think quickly matters. So 2 requests, same run, or 2 requests quickly from 2 separate runs. Oh, that's another interesting point. What if we ran another query in the first request? That's another great test. Yes. Let's duplicate this. And whatever. And now here we'll print request 1 done. And we'll see if it hangs, but we get request 1 done. This is an excellent test. It seems really tricky to use private IP on Google Cloud Run. Yeah, I vaguely remember this. Okay, request 1 done. Did I break anything else, or can I just deploy this? I don't think I broke anything else. Deploy. What do we theorize here? I think we theorize that it's going to break, right? That the first request here is going to break. That's the theory. If the whole thing comes back, we're shocked. I'm shocked, at least. I won't tell you all to be shocked, but I will be shocked. Yeah, I think this isn't going to work. What would it mean if it does? It would mean that there's some. See, I'm still using the pool, but you, Victor, replicated this bug without the pool. That means it's not like when the pool puts the connection back in the pool because you recreated the bug, whether that whole system wasn't in play. So I don't think it's going to be like some end of request cooldown phase, because the raw Postgres library wouldn't have any concept of that. It has no idea about request response. So I think it's just going to be either the closing. Yeah, it's going to be the closing of any connection, the termination of something. That's my theory. If this all happens, then, well, it actually, it carves away a ton of other possible theories. So it would zoom in our investigation. We would have a smaller target of where the bug could lie. But I don't think that's what we're going to see. Does Cloud Run pause the instance as soon as it is listening on a port? Pause as soon as it's listening. What do you mean, Victor? Like as soon as it's done listening? Like as soon as the request ends? Say that with twice as many words. This could be a failure point of the proxy. Yeah, it sure could. All right, let's refresh here. Is this going, so Marco works, right? Let's show ourselves that. The app is deployed. Load just once. Nothing. But let's see if we got a full round of logs and we got that like request 1 complete or whatever I wrote. Logs, scroll to the bottom. Yeah, request 1 done. Wait a minute. But then we did get more stuff. And then we just got resolved option 1 and we're hanging on option 2. Oh, I did actually change the logic of this. I didn't appreciate that earlier. I did change the logic of this because it never would ask question 2 or option 2 in a normal universe where it loaded option 1. What file was that in? Retry? Resolved. Yeah, here we go. So it didn't used to try option 2. It never used to call open if it got something here. So I actually changed the behavior of this code. So I will say here, this will be option 1 or option 2. Now I have to deploy again. And this will now mean option 1 and option 2 will be the same thing if option 1 loads. But that's fine because we're not even like getting any intel about these, just as instance of. Redeploy. Victor says, I'm thinking it can be an optimization. If the instance is paused, but the load balancer listens for connections and starts the instance when it detects a connection. I see. Yeah, so Cloud Run does scale down to 0, but not that fast. It's actually a trade secret how much it's the rate at which it scales down, and I literally don't know the answer, but I know that it's not that fast. I think it's in the order of tens of seconds or something before Cloud Run kills an instance. But I genuinely don't know. But it's not a half a second. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. It's loading. It's not loading. It's building. Okay, this will complete in a more good way the test that we tried to run last time, which was Randall's idea. Randall, I at first glossed over the wisdom in that statement. The quickly is just brilliant. Because we've never run 2 queries in the same thing. Aren't we all? Aren't we all? Yeah. All right, it's deployed. Marco works. Hello, Polo. Still timing out. Refresh. Works. Whoa. Refresh. Hangs. This told us something. Well, the pool is still tricky because what could happen here is the pool could say, you know, sure, use one of the connections for this query, and then this is so soon after that first query is done, and like maybe the first connection isn't back in the pool yet. Maybe this uses the second connection. And then maybe the problem still comes shortly after when this connection gets ultimately terminated, which means the time is now to remove pool from our setup. So I'm going to end all of our pool usage. And to do that, I'm going to go to pub.dev, packages, Postgres, and I'm just going to steal the connection info. Here we go. It's PostgreSQL connection and their mix of positional and named parameters. What is this? Start discussion? Where the heck did that come from? Okay, so we're not using endpoint anymore. We're using PostgreSQL connection, and its host goes here. Whoops. Host goes here. Oh, why did I cut this? What did I just do? Oh, I pasted what I meant to cut. Brilliant. Okay, Dart test. This is the name of the database. So we'll grab this code. And let's make all of this format. Okay, so the name of the database goes here. The user goes here. Oh, right, this one is a named parameter, user name. And then the password goes here. And I can't type. And then I bet this also has an is socket connection. Yes, is Unix socket. I literally can't type anything. This is crazy. Is Unix socket is same value. Okay. So now we have a PostgreSQL connection. And in our main, funny thing here is, so let's just make a variable con equals pg endpoint. Still not a great name for that. Okay, so then how do we use this? Connection.open and then connection.query. Sure. So connection.open, we'll say here, and then we'll have this variable up here. This will be late PostgreSQL connection con. Okay, so we have the connection. We open it in the main method. And then in here, we don't do any of this anymore. In here, we're now going to say con.query, and we pass in all of this, right? No, what am I talking about? I just pass in select now. And this is going to return that same list of lists. Yeah, absolutely. So now, fine, whatever. Fine. Let's print the first one. So this is going to be await, and then we wrap u in parentheses, and then we grab 0, 0. What's the problem here? What am I doing wrong? I don't think I want... Huh? What's the issue? I'm missing a closing parenthesis. That's what it is. Okay, what's your deal? Void? It can't be used. Oh, because you're on print. Oh, that's the issue. There we are. Oh, no, you're still unhappy. Future Postgres result. You're outside of the await. Oh, goodness. This goes here. Okay. I'm looking good here. Making this look easy. Have you tried closing the pool at the end of the call? Wish I would have read that before I ripped the pool out. Hi, Simon. Hey, help. So I'm going to do this, and then we're going to run a second one. And then we're going to return that toString. And we're going to, well, we don't need to print that the first query ended because we'll just see the time print. Okay. And then there'll be some connection closing shenanigans we can play around with at the end of this, but I think this will at least work. Let's run this locally and just make sure it works. So dart bin server.dart. Looking good. Come over to localhost, refresh, get a time, it keeps loading. Good, good, good. And it should be printing these times. It is. Awesome. It's printing the times right next to a log statement, which also has the time. So not confusing at all. And obviously, Marco works. Okay, so this isn't 100% broken. So let's get started. So we can build and deploy. Soon, I'm gonna have to take this debugging offline, but I think we're in a pretty, we're continuing to make progress here. And I'm getting good ideas from you all, so I appreciate it. All right, I'm gonna just reason about this while it deploys. So there's an open question here of closing the connection, which I'm not ever doing And I don't know the implications of this. The connection is opened in main. So like when, I mean, it does kind of seem like it should stay open the whole time, right? And then it will just close when the server ends. You know, I think this is reasonable. There's probably a more elegant way to close it, like when the server ends, to make sure it closes and the database doesn't think it's still open or something. But I think this isn't going to get in the way of us testing this bug. So we open the connection, we run 2 simple queries. And Victor, you've said that you've caused this to error. Train of thought, we are debugging a problem with talking to a Postgres database on Cloud SQL from Cloud Run using the Dart Postgres library. It works on Cloud Run to Cloud SQL with other languages, so other libraries, and it works with the library. It works with the Dart Postgres library from Google Compute Engine. It is just the confluence of Cloud Run, the Dart Postgres library, and Cloud SQL that are somehow aligning their stars to cause this problem. We're trying to rule out who the guilty party is and isn't. Okay. What did I just do? I deployed the app. So now when I refresh here, we'll see something. And that's that it's pending. Okay, let's look at the logs. Current time is 42. Okay, scrolling down to 42. There is no logs because I pretty much deleted all the print statements. We did. I was supposed to print the time though, right? Right there. This is supposed to print the time, and it is not printing the time. Why? No, nothing prints there. Does Marco work? I should hit Marco first. Marco still works. Now it hangs. So that's probably a different instance. Oh, I keep switching screens when I just mean to switch tabs. Okay, so we're going to see Marco load once. There it is. And we never did get the time. And we get no error, nothing, no error. All right, it seems like it's with the proxy. This really seems like it's with the proxy. I know some folks that work on the proxy, and I'm going to talk to them. But I think that is we got enough to call it today. I'm going to file a bug and talk to the guy. And the proxy is written in Go. He's like this super Go expert. A couple other people on the team, but yeah, I know the folks who work on the proxy, and I'm going to talk to them about it. Try to call in a favor. Try to convince them that I even have a favor to call in. Okay, man, this was an adventure. I don't know about you all, but it was a wild ride on my end. A wild, wild ride. Yeah, Victor, thanks for making ServerPod and being a bit of a guinea pig on a fairly advanced GCP deploy that you were almost going to have no issues with, but for this. A couple other config things we're working out the kinks on there, but yeah, this is the real showstopper for the Cloud Run flavor of ServerPod. Anyway, I'm going to try to get it figured out because I know that I also want to be able to just deploy Dart code to Cloud Run that talks to a database. And right now, I can't do that. So that's not great. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the ideas. I would still be probably just staring out the window, wondering what things to test without your good ideas. So this really was quite a team effort. Man, honestly, kind of, I think maybe the most fun episode on my end. I don't think we're going to get the viewership of like interviewing Remy last week, but debugging with with the boys and the gals, doesn't get better than that. So, okay, I'll be back next week. I've got a guest lined up. We'll be back in Dart Google Cloud land. It's going to be fun. Stay tuned. Until then, see everybody.